Brief note on New Historicism 20th Century Literary Theory. A critical approach developed in the 1980s in the writings of Stephen Greenblatt. New Historicism is characterized by a parallel reading of a text with its socio-cultural and historical conditions, which form the co-text. New historians rejected the fundamental tenets of new criticism, that the text is an autotelic artifact, and liberal humanism, that the text has timeless significance and universal value. On the contrary, New Historicism, as Louis Montrose suggested, deals with the textuality of history and the historicity of texts. Textuality of history refers to the idea that history is constructed and fictionalized, and the historicity of text refers to its inevitable embedment within the socio-political conditions of its production and interpretation. Though it rejects many of the assumptions of poststructuralism, New Historicism is in a way poststructuralist in that it rejects the essential idea of a common human nature that is shared by the author, characters and readers. Instead it believes that identity is plural and hybrid. A new historicist interpretation of a text begins with identifying the literary and non-literary texts available and accessible to the public at the time of its production, followed by reading and interpreting the text in the light of its co-text. Such an interpretive analysis would ideally begin with a powerful and dramatic explication of the anecdote, which is the historical context or the co-text. Thus the text and the context are perceived as expressions of the same historical moment. Stephen Greenblatt's Renaissance self-fashioning, From Moore to Shakespeare 1980 does a new historicist reading of Renaissance plays, revealing how self-fashioning was an episteme of the era, as depicted in the portraits and literature of the time. The discipline of New Historicism has been influenced by Althusser's concept of ideology, the Derridean deconstructionist idea that a text is at war with itself, Bakhtinian dialogism which posits that a text contains a multiplicity of conflicting voices, and most prominently by Foucauldian power, knowledge and discourse. Analyzing the nature of power, Foucault expounds that power, for instance, in the form of the panoptic surveillance sat defines what is truth, knowledge, normalcy. New Historicism believes in the Foucauldian idea of the capillary modes of power, which like Althusser's ideology interpellates the lives and actions of the citizens. Foucault's archaeological concept of history as archive informs yet another tendency of the new historicists, in that they consider history as fictionalized and as a co-text, while traditional historians consider history as facts and as the background to the text, which is the foreground. Foucault observes that history is characterized by gaps and fissures. Contemporary historicists highlight the discontinuities and conflicts of history, rather than write in a coherent manner. He does not, like traditional historians, write history as a unified, continuous story. Thus new historicism applies the poststructuralist idea that reality is constructed and multiple, and the Foucauldian idea of the role of power in creating knowledge.